Shen Mingyan and I were reborn together. We had been deeply in love in our previous life. But this time, he rose from passing the imperial examinations to becoming a high-ranking official. I waited a full 5 years, yet he never came to my home to propose. I finally realized. It turned out, he wanted to live a different life. Main text, in my previous life, Shen Mingyan and I were the universally acknowledged couple. At dawn, he would draw my eyebrows. Returning home, he would pluck a branch of apricot blossoms for me. In the cold, he would warm my feet in his embrace. By the age of 40, he had risen to a second-rank official, yet I remained his sole consort. When the emperor sought to bestow beautiful concubines and maids upon him, he refused them all. Our devotion knew no doubt. 10 years passed as one day. Therefore, this lifetime, when others sought to marry me, be they of overwhelming wealth or peerless beauty, I refused them all. I would wait for Shen Mingyan. I told my father I already had a beloved. Come this day next year, after passing the imperial examinations, he would come to ask for my hand. Father railed that I'd lost my mind, rejecting noble houses and powerful clans for a destitute scholar born into poverty. I replied that he would leap through the dragon gate, his future boundless. Even if Shen Mingyan possesses extraordinary talent, could he ever rival a century-old family legacy? On her deathbed, Mother made Father swear to treat me well, or we would never meet again in the next life. Thus, though enraged, Father could not bring himself to force me. And so, I turned away every suitor. Spring passed, autumn came. The moonlight remained unchanged. I waited year after year. In the first year, I recalled Shen Mingyan telling me he'd been bullied by a spoiled young master. I believed my rebirth's purpose was to save the young Shen Mingyan. When Shen Mingyan was being beaten, I rushed to his aid with my men. A flicker of surprise crossed 16-year-old Shen Mingyan's eyes. He thanked me with respectful courtesy. "Thank you, Miss Wen." I sensed the distance in his tone. My heart felt bitter, yet I understood this was merely our first encounter in this lifetime. I secretly paid his private school tuition and covertly supported him. I placed silver on his windowsill, only feeling at ease when I saw him take it. The second year, Shen Mingyan passed the imperial examinations. But no marriage proposal came. Newly entered the court, he must have encountered some trouble. I pleaded with my father to mentor him. Reluctantly, Father agreed, helping him establish his footing. Yet Shen Mingyan seemed to avoid any association with my father, perhaps to prevent suspicion. Several times I tried to feign chance encounters, but he always hurried past, never giving me a chance to speak. By the third year, Shen Mingyan still hadn't appeared. I wondered if my rebirth had triggered events different from my past life. It was all my fault. I became cautious, daring not to venture out freely. That year, I suppressed my longing, content only to glimpse Shen Mingyan from afar. In the fourth year, before Shen Mingyan returned, Father informed me he'd been assigned to serve in the south for a year. He was now a favored figure before the emperor, having repeatedly achieved extraordinary feats. Those merits clearly weren't his in my previous life. Hearing my father's words, I suddenly realized Shen Mingyan had also been reborn. When exactly had he been reborn? I recalled the year we first met. Before I had even introduced myself, he had called me Miss Wen. So, he had been reborn back then. Apricot blossoms swayed, drifting onto the branches. A vague premonition stirred within me. Sure enough, by the 5th year, Shen Mingyan had returned from the south. Yet he still hadn't come to propose. Instead, rumors spread that the emperor intended to marry his princess to him. Outside, rain pounded the eaves. Heaven and earth seemed indistinguishable. Watching the falling rain, my heart plummeted. My past life with Shen Mingyan felt like nothing more than a grand dream. I waited for him for 5 years. Waiting until I became an old maid. Suitors who once came in endless streams now numbered few. Of those remaining, some sought me only as a secondary wife, while others came from families vastly inferior to the Wen's. The Wen household's once bustling courtyard grew cold and quiet. My reputation was tarnished, and my father endured endless gossip. Only now did it dawn on me, given another chance, Shen Mingyan wanted a different life. And in that life, there was no place for me. Then so be it. Gazing at the rain-shattered blossoms, I summoned my maid and whispered, "Tell father I consent to the marriage." With those words, amidst the maid's gasps, darkness engulfed my vision and I fainted. Before my consciousness faded, I thought, my connection with Shen Mingyan in this lifetime ends here. Years will pass. No further ties. 2 months later, I encountered Shen Mingyan again at a banquet before my wedding. Standing in a corner, I watched him approach, surrounded by admirers like stars around the moon. His rise to prominence came sooner than in my past life. He wore a moon-white brocade robe, his tall, slender frame framed by bright eyes and sparse brows. His features straddled adolescence and manhood, yet his demeanor was already deep and austere. This contradiction and air of mystery made many women blush. My own heart skipped a beat. I instinctively took 2 steps toward him. Shen Mingyan seemed to sense my presence and lifted his gaze toward me. The next moment, a pink-clad maiden flung herself beside him, cutting off his glance. "Brother Mingyan, you're wearing the sash I made today." I snapped back to reality. The emperor's little princess, Sinew, clutched Shen Mingyan's sleeve, covertly staking her claim. The usually stoic Shen Mingyan allowed her to cling to him without the slightest hint of displeasure. 3 rounds of banquet had passed. A maid came to find me, saying Princess Sinew wished to discuss painting techniques with me. The princess had given an order, I had no choice but to go. Following the attendant through winding corridors, I arrived beside an artificial lake in rockery. The moment I stopped, a slap struck my face. Pinned to my knees by 2 attendants, I hadn't even processed what was happening. Princess Sinew looked down at me with disdain. "Wen Huaisu, you're nothing but a toad dreaming of swan meat, daring to covet Brother Mingyan." I protested, "Your Highness misunderstands. I am already betrothed." Before I could finish, Princess Sinew cut me off. "You're as disgusting as a sewer rat, lurking in the shadows to spy on Brother Mingyan and forcing a pouch upon him." A shredded pouch was tossed before me. The embroidered apricot blossoms were now unrecognizable. That was the pouch I'd used to hold the silver for Shen Mingyan's studies. How had it ended up in Princess Sinew's hands? She answered my question. "Brother Mingyan said your obsession with him, your vow never to marry for his sake, has caused him great distress. Being kind-hearted, he couldn't bring himself to tell you plainly, so he asked this palace to handle it." I was struck dumb, staring at the tattered pouch in disbelief. I couldn't understand. Even if we were not meant to be in this life, could the decades of mutual support in our past life have been false? If Shen Mingyan had told me sooner, I would never have sought him out again. Why did he accept my silver while simultaneously plotting to rid himself of me? Princess Sinew savored the pallor on my face. Until a maid announced, "Shen Mingyan has arrived." Her eyes flickered, as if conceiving some brilliant scheme. She addressed me, "Today, I shall shatter your hopes once and for all. This will spare you from haunting me like a restless spirit." The familiar footsteps behind me drew nearer. Princess Sinew cried out, "Brother Mingyan, save me." With that, she plunged into the lake and yanked me down with her. I was instantly submerged, my mind going blank. Water surged into my chest, crushing my organs. Memories of that year my mother left, when treacherous servants pushed me into the river, suddenly surged back. Bone-chilling cold eroded my will. In utter despair, I saw Shen Mingyan leap in after me. He knew I couldn't swim, knew I feared water. Hope flickered in my heart, but he swam straight toward Princess Sinew without hesitation. Princess Sinew feigned being pushed by me, then put on a show of struggling in the water. Her maidservant watched the spectacle from the shore, showing not a hint of concern. Such a clumsy charade, how could Shen Mingyan, who had lived 2 lifetimes, possibly believe it? Yet he did. His panicked expression seemed genuine. Suddenly, I recalled my past life. It was the 3rd year after Shen Mingyan and I were married. Princess Sinew publicly declared her affection for Shen Mingyan. The emperor, unable to resist his youngest daughter, tentatively suggested Shen Mingyan divorce his wife and remarry. Shen Mingyan flatly refused at the time, even going so far as to resign his official post. The emperor had no choice but to relent. Shen Mingyan avoided Princess Sinew like the plague. I once teased him, asking if he truly disliked Princess Sinyu, who was both beautiful and sweet. Shen Mingyan laughed wryly. I couldn't possibly afford such a little princess. The following year, Princess Sinyu was sent away for a political marriage. Within a few years, she met a tragic end. I heard she died horribly, her body covered in marks of abuse. Years later, Shen Mingyan murmured in a dream, had I married you, you wouldn't have had to go. Everything is my fault. I betrayed you. After waking, he never mentioned it again. I assumed he'd merely been tormented by guilt in a nightmare. Now, it seems there was more to it than that. My body sank steadily downward. I watched Shen Mingyan cradle the heart jade carefully in his arms as he made his way ashore. From start to finish, he never once looked at me. My limbs grew weaker by the moment, and my will to survive slowly faded. Just then, a shadow, so fast it was barely discernible, leapt down. 3 When I awoke, I was back at the Wen residence. Father, his face dark, urged me to take my medicine. I tried to calm him. After all, Princess Sinyu had been punished. Father hadn't remarried all these years, fearing I might be bullied by family again. But in one moment of oversight, Princess Sinyu had taken advantage. He knelt directly in the main hall, pleading for justice on my behalf. The emperor's face turned ashen. Yet no matter how much he doted on his youngest daughter, he dared not be so blind. Princess Sinyu was punished with copying texts and ordered to come apologize in person. But days passed since I awoke, and she still hadn't come. Given her haughty nature, she likely won't come at all. I don't mind. Instead, an unexpected visitor presented a calling card. Curious why Shen Mingyan, who once avoided me like the plague, now sought me out, I invited him in. Shen Mingyan stood in the courtyard, gazing at me from afar, not stepping into my bedroom at all. His graceful, refined features harmonized with the apricot blossoms. It was truly a splendid spring scene. He spoke politely, Miss Wen, I come today to convey the princess's apology. She is still young and has a rather headstrong nature, but she means no harm. The maids who stood guard on the shore that day all knew how to swim. They would never have let you come to any harm. Princess Sinyu had just turned 16, a full 5 years younger than both Shen Mingyan and myself. Yet these words held little persuasive power. Before he could finish, I began coughing. His expression froze slightly as he looked at my pale face. He quickly recovered. The princess sent me to summon 2 imperial physicians. They will arrive today. Shen Mingyan was born into humble origins yet rose nearly to the rank of chancellor and marquis. While his father's support played a part, his own abilities were paramount. He was steady and reserved, his words carefully measured so that one could find no fault in them. To contradict him would make one seem petty and unreasonable. See, now he was turning that skill on me. I simply smiled. It matters not. Fortunately, someone came to my rescue later. Only, I did not have time to learn his identity. Might Minister Shen enlighten me? The dark figure saved me and left. Only those present knew who he was. For some reason, Shen Mingyan's expression darkened. When he spoke again, his tone had grown colder. I did not rescue Miss Wen immediately that day precisely to protect your reputation. Truth be told, I am already betrothed to Her Highness the Princess. So, he avoided saving me to steer clear of suspicion. It seems he's resolved to give me not a single chance. My fingers trembled slightly. Though I'd expected this, hearing it from his own lips still made my heart flutter. But only for a moment. Miss Wen remains a maiden of the inner chambers. That chivalrous gentleman chose to remain nameless, surely mindful of this circumstance. He spoke as if whoever saved me would become bound to me. He fears marrying me, so he assumes others would too. Shen Mingyan seemed unaware that I, too, had been reborn. Everything I'd done before was simply because I admired him. Seeing my silence, Shen Mingyan paused, softening his tone slightly as he said, Miss Wen, I wish you a swift recovery and a good marriage. His gaze lingered, his words carrying profound meaning. I understood. He was telling me, this lifetime, do not entangle yourself with him again. I chuckled dryly. Thank you for your well wishes, Minister Shen. To be honest, I've already found one. As my words fell, a crack suddenly appeared on Shen Mingyan's usually composed face. For Shen Mingyan's expression darkened, his tone icy and warning. "Miss Wen, I am already betrothed. Please know your place." He seemed to have misunderstood. I felt like laughing, but held it back. I nodded. "You said it yourself." Shen Mingyan choked, his brow knitting tightly. "Stubborn," he muttered. With that, he swept his sleeve and left, as if afraid of being tainted by something unclean. During my convalescence, Father sent word to the family with whom I was betrothed, explaining the situation. The physician said my constitution was frail to begin with, and after this ordeal, conceiving children might prove difficult. My father gained a few more strands of white hair, but I felt little sorrow. For in my past life, it took nearly 10 years of marriage before I bore a daughter. And she, too, was frail and sickly from childhood, passing away before me. This was a pain I wished to forget. As this thought surfaced, memories of my past life suddenly sharpened. Overlooked details leapt vividly to mind. My daughter, Shen Changxi, whose childhood name was Nian. Changxi, enduring thoughts. Changyi, lasting remembrance. I wonder whom Shen Mingyan was thinking of when he chose this name? That year, I held Nian's hand as we went with Shen Mingyan to pray at the temple. An ancient tree stood within the temple grounds, its branches heavy with red cloth strips bearing countless people's wishes. After lighting incense, I returned to see Shen Mingyan holding Nian while tying a red silk ribbon to a branch. I casually asked, "What did you write?" Shen Mingyan calmly set Nian down, took my hand, and said, "Nian still knows too few characters. We should give her more homework when we get back." Then, with a few words, he steered the conversation elsewhere. At the time, I didn't think much of it, assuming it was just something about family safety or the like. Now, recalling it, the red silk ribbon fluttered in the wind, the characters growing clearer. It was Nian's childish handwriting, boldly declaring, "May I trade my life for hers to begin anew." I tumbled off the bed with a thud. Nian was born with congenital deficiencies. At her birth, the doctor declared she wouldn't live past 10. She passed away before reaching the age of coming of age. I couldn't believe the Buddha would be so blind as to trade my Nian for the Jade Princess. But I never imagined Shen Mingyan could be so heartless. He disregarded all moral principles, daring to scheme to exchange his own daughter for another woman. Past life. As he passed, clutching my hand, he prayed for heaven to grant him a second chance, just to reunite with me. That's why, in this life, I agreed to wait 5 years for him. Now, I finally understand. His plea for a second chance was for him and Sinew. It was never about me. Not just this life, even the past life I thought was blissful was nothing but lies and deceit. Just then, the maid delivered a reply. That family didn't mind my possible infertility. The maid joyfully relayed the message, "Miss, the young master says he wants to marry you. If you desire children, he'll arrange for you to adopt several in the future." How could there be such a wonderful suitor? Indeed, how could there be such a wonderful suitor? A tall, upright figure involuntarily flashed through my mind. 5 soon. The marriage between Shen Mingyan and Princess Sinew was proclaimed to the world. Every street and alley echoed with praise. A match made in heaven, a perfect union of beauty and talent. It was said that Shen Mingyan, who never spared a kind word for any woman, would even wear a woman's hairpin just to make Princess Sinew smile. The books Princess Sinew was punished to copy were delivered to the Wen residence. A single glance was enough for me to recognize every page as Shen Mingyan's handiwork. Handwriting can be altered, but the habits of the writer cannot be changed. Shen Mingyan truly doted on her immensely. In a past life, when Nian's hands developed frostbite during a bitter winter, her whining pleas to avoid writing only earned her stern reprimands. However, Princess Sinew's reputation for being willful was well known, and she was occasionally criticized. Some murmured that if she weren't a princess, how could she possibly be worthy of Shen Mingyan? Unexpectedly, Shen Mingyan stepped forward and declared, "Her childlike heart shines with pure sincerity. To me, she is a fairy descended from the heavens, a rarity beyond compare. Upon seeing her, all other women I've known before pale in comparison, mere mortals of the mundane world. To have a fairy favor me, what more could I ask for?" His heartfelt confession was deeply moving. Princess Sinyu had enjoyed every earthly luxury, never needing to worry about anything, naturally untouched by worldly dust, like a fairy. It was precisely because such a fairy had perished so young in a past life that Shen Mingyan cherished her all the more. I happened to witness Shen Mingyan kneeling down to massage Princess Sinyu's ankles himself. Princess Sinyu whinged that she was tired from walking. After massaging her ankles, Shen Mingyan hoisted her onto his back and carried her step by step through the bustling marketplace. Shen Mingyan, who usually valued appearances, paid no heed to the stares of onlookers. It was Princess Sinyu who flushed crimson with embarrassment. Their tender affection surpassed anything I had shared with Shen Mingyan in our past life. Several days later, the annual painting competition hosted by Her Majesty the Empress Dowager commenced. After the contest, the paintings would be sold at a charity auction. All proceeds from the auction would be donated as disaster relief funds. This event served as a platform for many talented scholars to establish their reputations. I was unskilled in managing a household, childless and inept at domestic affairs. Had Shen Mingyan not married me in my past life, I might have ended up discarded in some man's inner quarters. My sole talent lay in painting, which had earned me modest fame even in my maiden days. In that previous competition, I had claimed first place with a painting depicting starving corpses. That painting of starving corpses was also inflated to an astronomical price, ultimately acquired by a mysterious noble in black robes and a hood for 10,000 taels of silver. This is a charitable endeavor, and I intend to participate in this lifetime as well. The moment I arrived at the venue, I heard waves of admiration. Someone remarked, who would have thought a princess of such stature could paint a work so deeply compassionate toward the common people? That brushwork is beyond the capabilities of ordinary people. No. The most important thing is the subject matter of this painting of starving corpses, the technique is secondary. I had misunderstood Princess Sinyu before. She and Magistrate Shen are truly a match made in heaven. The praise was unceasing. I made my way to the crowd gathered around the painting and looked up. There hung a painting that felt intensely familiar. A painting nearly identical to one I had created in my past life. The same composition, the same brushwork. The only difference was the signature on this painting, Sinyu. It depicted what I had witnessed during a journey south to find Shen Mingyan 1 year after our marriage, passing through a region ravaged by famine. Shen Mingyan had naturally seen this painting in my previous life. Besides, Princess Sinyu never cared about the common people. She had never even set foot in the poor quarters of the capital. How could she have witnessed scenes of starvation and corpses littering the fields? The artist of this painting was obvious. I looked at Shen Mingyan, our eyes meeting. I had no intention of accusing him, yet he shot me a warning glance before speaking aloud. This contest is primarily for charitable purposes. The identity of the artist is irrelevant. Rather than focusing on who painted it, we should concentrate on the painting itself. Princess Sinyu surely shares this view. His words were meant to make me back down, to swallow this silent humiliation. The onlookers, having praised the painting, now began to extol Princess Sinyu's character. Princess Sinyu's eyes darted away for a moment, but she soon lost herself in the unprecedented praise. Her maid, flustered, blurted out, "Miss, this painting is identical to ours. What should we do?" She hadn't lowered her voice, and others overheard her words. The crowd gathered around the painting fell silent for a moment. Soon, someone spoke up. "I saw Princess Sinyu's painting 3 months ago at the Imperial Academy. She couldn't master one part, so she specifically asked Minister Shen to take it to the Imperial Academy for guidance. Copying paintings is the despicable act of a shameless person." Shen Mingyan proved to be flawless. The maid, enraged, unfurled my starving man painting before the crowd. "Our young mistress is not that kind of person." But this only further cemented the accusation of plagiarism against me. My painting had been finished just this morning, the ink was still wet. The murmurs and jeers of the crowd grew louder and louder. Some even pointed directly at my nose, cursing me as shameless and shameless. The noble ladies I once knew well all retreated, unwilling to be associated with me. My maid's face flushed crimson as she feebly defended me. Had I not lived a lifetime before, I would have been overcome with shame in this moment, wishing I could die on the spot. After a while, Shen Mingyan finally declared with feigned magnanimity, "All artists share the same benevolent heart. To momentarily lose one's way in the pursuit of fame and fortune is understandable. There's no need for harsh judgment. The crowd clearly wasn't satisfied with this conclusion, but Shen Mingyan's selfless demeanor, refusing to hold a grudge against me, left them with little to say. Instead, they turned to lavishing praise on Shen Mingyan and Princess Sinyu. Suddenly, I burst into laughter. Minister Shen, but in your... No, in Princess Sinyu's painting, I clearly saw my name written there. Someone asked, Miss Wen, have you been exposed? Are you lashing out in anger and speaking nonsense? I ignored him. Just then, the Empress Dowager's maids arrived to collect my competition entries. Under everyone's gaze, I instructed my maid to pack away my starving corpse's painting. Only then did the maid react, cheerfully acknowledging the order. She turned and called out to a servant. The servant approached, carefully cradling 10 scrolls of paintings. When it comes to charity, the more the better. Having lived this life twice, my painting skills had long since reached the pinnacle of mastery. During the 5 years I waited for Shen Mingyan, I painted whenever I had free time. I created over 1,000 works, yet today I brought only 10. Renowned masters wouldn't come to steal the spotlight, the contestants were all young scholars. Each had carefully selected 1 or 2 pieces to bring. Some curious onlookers remarked, could Miss Wen be planning to win by sheer volume? The Empress Dowager's attendant also looked troubled. Miss Wen, this many might be. I replied, let my servants accompany you to deliver the paintings to Her Majesty. Those she dislikes, I shall take back. She pondered for a moment before nodding. Whispers continued, though no one noticed Shen Mingyan's complex expression. We waited a long time, but no matter how long we waited, the Empress Dowager never returned my paintings. Instead, the competition began. Seated among the judges, besides the Empress Dowager, were several venerable masters of calligraphy and painting. The Empress Dowager's gaze upon me held considerable approval. The masters also looked at me with affection. Among them were 2 who would later become my masters in my past life. The first place painting was carried forward. It was indeed the painting of starving corpses signed by Princess Sinyu. It was the choice everyone expected. One judge said, Princess, this painting has profound meaning. Though the brushwork is still somewhat immature, after discussion, we unanimously decided it deserves first place. After all, it was the painting that had fetched an astronomical price in my past life. Now it bore the signature of a royal princess. Its first place win was entirely within my expectations. Princess Sinyu lifted her chin haughtily, casting a triumphant glance my way. Someone remarked pointedly, Princess Sinyu's painting embodies a heart for the world. Unlike certain others who still engage in petty theft and plagiarism, refusing to admit their mistakes when caught. Truly disgraceful. Shen Mingyan's tightly pursed lips relaxed slightly, as if he'd breathed a sigh of relief. But immediately after, Shen Mingyan saw the 2nd place, 3rd place, 4th place. All the way to 10th place. One painting depicted a splendid imperial court, mountains and rivers in splendid view. One painted a scene of widespread desolation, rivers of blood flowing. One captured the solitary smoke rising over the desert, the setting sun over the long river. From 2nd to 10th place, each work flowed like clouds in water, its brushwork and composition forming a distinct school of its own. All bore the same signature, Wen Huaisu. The room fell deathly silent. Shen Mingyan's composed expression finally cracked. 7 After this incident, my artistic reputation was firmly established. Even more resounding than in my previous life. As I took my seat, the room remained so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Several masters praised my paintings. Why on earth would I want to plagiarize her work with my skill? Everyone knew the truth, their eyes darting between Princess Sinyu and Shen Mingyan. Shen Mingyan's expression was so dark it could have dripped water. The Empress Dowager listened to a few whispered words from her maid, who must have reported the earlier absurd scene. She glanced at Princess Sinyu, whose eyes darted nervously, and understood everything. Unable to bear the stares of so many, Princess Sinyu pushed Shen Mingyan away in anger and ran off. The Empress Dowager could not fail to uphold the dignity of the imperial family. She promptly proposed commencing the auction, effectively brushing aside the false accusation of plagiarism against me. I said nothing more. Even if I'd wished to press the matter, I had no recourse. Shen Mingyan had copied my work from my previous life, yet I possessed no evidence to prove it. But justice resides in the hearts of the people. I felt no injustice. However, the auction that followed astonished me even more. The starving masses painting was still being driven to a high price by several wealthy merchants who collected paintings. In the blink of an eye, it reached 1,000 taels of silver. In my previous life, my starving masses painting had ultimately sold for 10,000 taels of silver. This lifetime, it seemed likely to fetch even more. This was a prime opportunity to demonstrate loyalty and curry favor with the royal family. Yet, strangely, after the price reached 3,000 taels of silver, it showed no further fluctuation. My gaze instinctively drifted to a corner. I recalled from my previous life that a hooded man in black robes had sat there. Not only was his attire peculiar, but he also concealed his face with black cloth. Yet his bidding was exceptionally lavish. It was he who had driven the price of my starving masses painting all the way to 10,000 taels. As I pondered this, Princess Sinu's hungry ghost painting was already snapped up for 1,200 taels of silver. Now it was my painting's turn. Just then, a familiar voice suddenly sounded beside me. He said, 10,000 taels. 8 my paintings were sold in an instant. Each fetched 10,000 taels. The bidder was the dark-clad man beside me. The Empress Dowager's gaze held profound meaning. I couldn't help but glance at him several times. He seemed to sense my stare, his body stiffening slightly, clearly uncomfortable. After bidding on my paintings, he hurriedly left the auction hall, striding away with purpose. I rushed after him. I didn't notice Shen Mingyan's intense gaze fixed on my retreating figure. I only managed to call out, "Sir, please wait." The figure before me was tall and straight, his broad shoulders and narrow waist barely contained by the black robes. Hearing my voice, he didn't stop but instead quickened his pace. With one long stride, he left me 2 steps behind. Ouch! I twisted slightly and stumbled, falling to the ground. The black-clad man paused. Seeing this, a plan formed in my mind. I halted my attempt to rise, feigning distress. It hurt so much. The dark-clad man spun around in alarm, approaching me and crouching to inspect my injury. But he saw no wound. He only saw my eyes darting around his face, and the triumphant, teasing smile playing on my lips. He instantly understood, a flicker of embarrassed anger flashing in his eyes. Just as he was about to rise and leave, I spoke. "You were the one who saved me last time too, weren't you, young master?" The black-clad figure's pupils trembled, panic darting through his gaze. After a moment's silence, he lowered his voice and said, "So what if it was me?" I replied gratefully, "I've always wanted to thank you properly in person for saving my life. Without you, I would have been doomed." Though half his face was concealed, I could still see the flush spreading across his exposed skin. Sitting close, I watched his Adam's apple bob as he nervously swallowed. "How do you intend to repay me?" I smiled. At my smile, he seemed ready to flee again. In a rush, I grabbed his hood, drawing close to those poppy-like eyes and asked, "What do you want?" I caught the scent of incense on his clothes and saw his distinct lashes flutter rapidly. Apricot blossoms drifted from the branches, landing on his jet-black sleeves. The next moment, he jerked back, nearly knocking me over. He seemed furious, his tone unusually stern. "Miss Wen, as far as I know, you are already betrothed." I rose slowly, brushing dust from my skirt. He stared at me wide-eyed, breathing unevenly, as if condemning my frivolity. Yet the skin exposed on his face was flushed crimson, as if I were some lecher who had toyed with him. But I had only meant to tell him to stop sneaking around like this. "After all, but your highness, as far as I know, my betrothed is you." The current emperor had a younger brother, their mother's own flesh and blood. Yet years ago, that noble young prince had shielded the emperor from a blade to save his life. The sword had sliced through the lower half of his face, nearly severing his head. Though he survived, his features were forever disfigured. He withdrew from the world thereafter, rarely appearing in public. I recalled my interactions with him in my past life. They were few. A fleeting memory surfaced. As a child visiting the palace, I overheard someone call him an ugly monster behind his back. In the garden, I encountered the boy hiding in a rockery cave. His hideous scar startled me. He instinctively tried to flee, but I grabbed his arm. I gave him my handkerchief, adorned with apricot blossoms I had drawn myself. Children's words are always so direct, yet so hurtful. I said, "You can use this to cover the lower half of your face. That way, you won't frighten people." No matter how I think about it, this doesn't seem like the reason he would like me. After much pondering, perhaps it's because we are well matched. Both of us are outsiders in our respective noble families. One is disfigured. The other has stubbornly endured until becoming an old maid. After that banquet, I heard Princess Sinyu and Shen Mingyan had a huge fight. Princess Sinyu blamed Shen Mingyan for making her lose all face. Furious, she completely disregarded Shen Mingyan's dignity and slapped him in front of the servants. But soon, they were back together as if nothing had happened. Only, perhaps fate was cruel. Or perhaps Princess Sinyu was still too young, her joy coming swiftly and fading just as fast. The newly crowned top scholar retrieved a kite for her from a tree. Spring lingered. Princess Sinyu's heart skipped a beat. This scene was witnessed by Shen Mingyan. In her previous life, Princess Sinyu had confessed her love to Shen Mingyan many times, only to be rejected. What one cannot obtain stirs the deepest longing. Now that she had gained it, her heart no longer held it so dearly. Shen Mingyan was enraged beyond measure. Having lived 2 lifetimes, his fury alone was enough to terrify Princess Sinyu into near tears. She fled back to the palace, pleading with the emperor to revoke the betrothal decree, refusing to marry. How could the emperor agree to such a sudden reversal of his command? Shen Mingyan apologized to Princess Sinyu, promising never to raise his voice at her again. It took him considerable effort to soothe the spoiled little princess. Meanwhile, invitations to banquets began pouring in. The 2 distinguished families from that day invited me to exchange painting techniques. But strangely, suitors seeking my hand also increased. Few knew of my betrothal to the Prince of Yunnan. I listened as the matchmaker wove elaborate tales. The suitor who came to propose also said, "Miss Wen is exceptionally talented. I greatly admire her. Though she is a bit older, I imagine her temperament is more steady and reliable. I have several nephews and sons at home who could benefit from her guidance. In the future, our children." So they were seeking a tutor who wouldn't demand a dowry. Before he could finish, father had him thrown out. Besides him, many others came calling. Though father disapproved of every single suitor, it didn't stop him from gloating and bragging everywhere. It was during this time that Shen Mingyan returned. But this time, I had no desire to see him. I had my maid turn him away. He came 3 times in a row, and I refused him 3 times. But I never imagined he would use his memories from the previous life to find the small gate closest to my courtyard. He bribed the gatekeeper with a large sum of money and slipped inside. The moment I saw him, gazing at those familiar brows and eyes, my feelings were incredibly complex. Shen Mingyan and I had shared a lifetime together. Aside from that red silk cloth in the temple, he had never done a single wrong thing. Yet in this life, he repeatedly slandered me. Memories I thought I could forget surfaced once more before my eyes. The 5th year of our marriage. Because I mentioned craving peach blossom cakes, he traveled dozens of miles overnight to find the most renowned shop for them. The 10th year of our marriage. Nian Nian insisted on sleeping with me. Though I was a light sleeper, I couldn't bear to refuse her. So every night, after Nian Nian fell asleep, he would carry me back to our bedroom. The 15th year of our marriage. The high-ranking and powerful Minister Shen would still smile and bow to those several ranks below him, all to find ancient books for me. All these moments were beautiful memories. I couldn't fathom the reason. I only knew our bond had ended, and we needn't meet again. At this moment, Shen Mingyan said to me, "Miss Wen, to be honest, that painting of starving corpses was made for Princess Sinyu. It was a scene from my dream, yet somehow it resembles your painting so closely. Princess Sinyu has a childish nature and fancies herself a star. She asked me to paint one for her. It's all my fault. Please, Miss Wen, forgive this petty man's transgression." This explanation seemed plausible. But I didn't believe it. If it was all from his dream, how could he paint my starving masses nearly identical? And how could he, so young, wield such power in the imperial court? The warm, aged Shen Mingyan from my memories gradually faded. All that remained was this one before me, a young Shen Mingyan, brimming with ambition yet eyes full of calculation. He shifted all blame onto Princess Sinew. A fleeting dream. Hearts have changed. And he changed again and again. Shen Mingyan said, "Miss Wen, I misunderstood you. I wonder, do I still have a chance to properly get to know you?" His expression was cautious, yet he couldn't hide the certainty in his eyes. He seemed convinced I still harbored affection for him. Alas. I don't deny the past. But I no longer yearn for a tomorrow with him. I silently wiped the tears of release from my eyes and smiled. There's no need to get to know each other again. We already knew each other in a past life. The courtyard was quiet. Apricot blossoms bloomed freely and wildly. They drifted slowly from the branches, avoiding the young master beneath the tree, the one who had come countless times in past and present lives. Shen Mingyan stared at me, his lips parting, yet no sound emerged. He seemed unable to believe it, unwilling to accept it. He recalled the past, carefully piecing together our intersections in this life. I watched him quietly, my expression serene. After a long moment, he finally spoke, his voice hoarse and trembling. 5 years ago, when you appeared before me, had you already? I nodded. Shen Mingyan's face turned deathly pale. He realized I had been waiting for him all along. But after 5 years of waiting, what he brought was news of his marriage proposal to the princess. His lips trembled as if he wanted to say something more, yet no words came for a long time. I had little patience left to continue this conversation. I summoned a maid to escort him out. Before leaving, I told him, wishing you and Princess Sinew a lifetime of happiness. Shen Mingyan, who had been silent all along, suddenly became agitated. He protested, "No. It's not like that. My feelings for Princess Sinew are not romantic. I only feel guilty about my past life. I had the chance to save her, yet in the end, she died far from home. I simply couldn't bear to see that outcome again." I shook my head. It struck me as rather amusing. If he married Princess Sinew, she indeed wouldn't need to be sent as a peace offering. But as long as diplomatic ties between the two nations remained, the peace princess would simply be replaced by another. Did he intend to marry them all? I did not approve of Shen Mingyan. Yet my expression led him astray once more. Joy flashed in his eyes, his gaze suddenly brightening as he declared, "Huaisu, you truly do care for me. If you dislike Princess Sinew, I shall ensure she never appears before you again. I can arrange another residence for you. When the time is right, I shall petition for you to be granted the status of a co-wife." Before I could speak, the maid could no longer bear it. She flew into a rage, shouting, "My mistress already has the most suitable fiancé. Lord Shen, stop this nonsense." Shen Mingyan refused to believe it. He declared, "You waited 5 years for me, I won't accept that you've given up on me." His emotions flared. He shoved the maid aside and lunged to grab my hand. I stumbled back several steps. He didn't seem angered by my reaction. In our past life, we shared a harmonious marriage, growing old together. Through past and present lives, you remain the most important person in my heart. No matter what, Sinew must never come before you. Once the peace marriage is settled and her safety assured, I'll have no further dealings with her. I looked at him, my eyes utterly still. Shen Mingyan, do you really think I'd believe that? Having lived through it all again, I watched him walk this path silently, long since understanding his thoughts and desires. Born into modest means, though gifted with talent, he reached the pinnacle of power only upon entering middle age. The youthful triumphs and swift success he never experienced. He remained proud and unwilling to accept his fate. Thus, in this life, he still chose the path of officialdom, the one he knew best, the one he excelled at. He sought to make up for the resentment of his past life, both in his career and in love. In his previous life, he had me, a gentle, talented wife. This time, he wanted to try a spoiled, willful little princess. That lie about saving Princess Sinew's life? Good enough to fool himself. He had already reaped the rewards of claiming others' achievements. Now, he brought Princess Sinew to claim mine as well. Had I not been able to produce other paintings, my reputation would have been utterly ruined, nailed to the pillar of shame. When had he ever considered me? It was all for himself. I turned and left. Shen Mingyan tried to say something, but was intercepted by my father and the household servants who had come upon hearing the commotion. 12 later. Shen Mingyan came several more times. He didn't come empty-handed, bringing gifts. All things I cherished in my past life. But each time, my father drove him away with the servants. He didn't grow angry. Instead, he calmly told my father, "Huaisu has waited 5 years for me. Now 21, marrying me is her best choice." Enraged, my father smashed a broom over his head. The maid tried to reiterate that I was already betrothed to the Prince of Yongnan. But my father cut her off. Turning, he smiled slyly and ordered everyone to drop the matter. He intended to surprise Shen Mingyan. The day of the surprise arrived swiftly. The Prince of Yongnan, who had never appeared in court, arrived with a grand procession bearing lavish betrothal gifts. He had never involved himself in politics these years, instead dedicating himself to commerce. Out of guilt and trust, the emperor had granted him many conveniences and even bestowed numerous private estates upon him. Now, while he couldn't be called wealthy enough to rival a nation, he certainly ranked among the wealthy. Under an alias, of course. That's why he could afford such extravagance. This sudden blow jolted Shen Mingyan awake. The night before the wedding. It was also the last time I saw Shen Mingyan. Word had it that Princess Xinyu, upon learning of Shen Mingyan's repeated visits to me lately, had stormed back to the palace in fury, demanding the betrothal be annulled. The emperor, thoroughly vexed, summoned Shen Mingyan to his presence and questioned him about the matter. Shen Mingyan declared he had come solely to exchange painting techniques. After our previous contest, he had developed deep admiration for my skill. He spoke with remarkable candor. The emperor regarded him, uncertain whether to believe his words. Princess Xinyu's incessant wailing and tantrums were giving him a headache. Only then did Shen Mingyan feign regret. "Your servant admits his actions were indeed lacking in consideration. Princess Xinyu deserves the finest suitor, and I am unworthy of her. If your majesty wishes to dissolve the betrothal, I shall certainly comply." His words made it sound as though he were the wronged party. But the emperor couldn't care less about that now. He breathed a huge sigh of relief and promptly dissolved the engagement. Shen Mingyan rushed over that very night just to tell me this news. His response met with the locked gates of the Wen residence. The next day. 10 miles of crimson bridal procession, drums beating and gongs clanging. I married the Prince of Yongnan. It was rather amusing. Today he had replaced his usual veil with a crimson one. Quite fitting for the occasion. Shen Mingyan was barred from the crowd, never coming within 10 zhang of me. This, at least, fulfilled his past desire to avoid me at all costs. I didn't spare him a single glance. I was too busy hurrying to the bridal chamber. A perfect moment. The Prince of Yongnan lifted my veil. And I removed his mask. That gruesome scar had faded considerably with time, stretching from his jawline to his high, straight nose. Admittedly, it wasn't exactly beautiful. Yet the red candlelight cast upon his deep-set features made him resemble a jade-faced demon. It had a peculiar charm. I couldn't resist gently caressing it, feeling the trembling beneath my touch. He shook uncontrollably. As he trembled, a small handkerchief slipped from his bosom. A single apricot blossom was embroidered upon it. I paused, momentarily stunned. After a brief silence, I broke into a smile. "By the way, my husband, what is your name?" End of main text. End of entire story. Extra Chapter 1, Peaceful Years, many years later. My husband, my daughter Xingxing, and I went to the temple together to pray for blessings. Xingxing bore a striking resemblance to Nian. I told her she once had an older sister. She took this to heart, insisting I buy an extra of everything we purchased, carefully storing each item as for her sister. This temple visit, after I lit incense and stepped outside, I saw her carefully spelling out words for her father to write on red silk. "Sister Nian, Xingxing misses you very much. Xingxing is willing to share half of all her happiness with you." "No, Daddy, rewrite it. Half is too little. I'm already 8 years old, 8 years happier than Sister Nyan. So I'll share with her, share with her. My husband patiently waited while she counted on her fingers. In between, he wrote his own share. I leaned in to take a look. It was very cliché. First wish, may I be healthy and safe. Second, may all my endeavors prosper. Third, may I live long as an immortal among mortals. May all calamities seek him instead. Not a single word about his own wishes. Even after 10 years of marriage and an 8-year-old child, he still blushed easily. Under my gaze, he hurriedly tied the red silk ribbon to the tree, then returned as if nothing had happened, continuing to help Xingxing think of what to write. Gazing at the towering ancient tree, I thought of an old friend for the first time in ages. Shen Mingyan hadn't appeared before me in many years. Extra Chapter 2, Daily Regrets, One Past Life. Shen Mingyan came from poverty. His parents couldn't afford to raise 3 children, so they chose his eldest brother and youngest brother, abandoning him on the road while fleeing famine. He survived by begging and grew up eating handouts from others. He first heard Wen Huaisu's name when he had just arrived in the capital. They said her painting skills were remarkable, rivaling those of renowned masters. Shen Mingyan didn't believe it. Such a noble lady's fame was surely just hype. Only the mindless would believe her, worship her. Even the spoiled brats who bullied him liked Wen Huaisu. Once, upon hearing Wen Huaisu was at a tea house, one such playboy even spared Shen Mingyan to rush over and see her. Shen Mingyan felt no gratitude toward Wen Huaisu for this. Later, when he truly saw Wen Huaisu, it was as he watched a woman caressing a branch of apricot blossoms. Petals brushed her cheek in the breeze, and strands of hair danced in the wind. Shen Mingyan caught the sweet fragrance of the apricot blossoms. He was momentarily lost in thought. The woman's maid said, "Miss, you wish to paint this apricot branch. Why not pick it?" The woman shook her head. "I have already memorized its form." Shen Mingyan saw a man approach to strike up a conversation. But she refused him. So this was Wen Huaisu. A thought suddenly struck Shen Mingyan, how wonderful it would be if she became his wife someday. Surely every man would envy him. 2 years later, Shen Mingyan's wish came true. The moment Wen Huaisu agreed to marry him, his heart nearly burst with joy. Wen Huaisu was heaven's compensation for him. Compensation for all his past hardships. He would treat Wen Huaisu well. As for the matter concerning Princess Xinyu, Wen Huaisu's father had warned him. Her father had said that if he ever wronged Wen Huaisu, he would risk his own life to send Shen Mingyan to apologize to Wen Huaisu's mother. Her father worried needlessly. He had no desire to marry a princess. Though the current dynasty held no law forbidding prince's consort from holding office, it would inevitably hinder his career advancement. His current promotion hinged entirely on Wen Huaisu's father's approval. Besides, with such deep affection for Wen Huaisu, how could he ever betray her? Yet, life is but a fleeting span of years. He would occasionally let his guard slip. When colleagues pressed a fair maiden into his embrace, he took a full cup of tea's time before gently pushing her away. "I am already married. I shan't indulge in such frivolities with you." With that, he rose and departed. Behind him, voices echoed in praise. Minister Shen is truly a noble man. At times, he wondered. Would the parents who abandoned him as a child regret it if they knew he'd risen to the highest ranks of the court and married a noblewoman? He exhaled a breath of stale air, his features relaxing. From afar, he spotted the woman waiting outside the Shen residence. The night was cold, heavy with dew. Wen Huaisu held a lantern in one hand and a cloak in the other, walking toward him from a distance. Shen Mingyan suddenly wondered. What if this person were Princess Xinyu? Had he married the princess, his parents would surely beat their chests in regret, cursing their past decisions. In this life, right up until his final breath, he felt content. Since marrying Wen Huaisu, his life had flowed smoothly, free from hardship. If there was any dissatisfaction, it was the lack of children. Wen Huaisu was frail and unable to bear him a son to carry on the family line. Ah well. Life could never be perfect in every way. He was content. Closing his eyes, he held Wen Huaisu's hand, gazing at her face, long past its former beauty. After all these years together, no matter what she looked like, she remained the one he loved most. But if only life could be lived again. To this life. Shen Mingyan never imagined his wish would come true. He truly had been reborn. Heaven had indeed been kind to him. This lifetime, he would make amends for all the regrets of his past life. Using his memories from his previous existence, he rapidly advanced. He noticed Wen Huaisu watching him. Indeed. Both in his past life and this one, Wen Husa loved him deeply. But he, in this lifetime, hadn't yet made up his mind. It wasn't that he no longer loved Wen Huaisu. It was just, wouldn't spending 2 lifetimes with the same person eventually grow tiresome? Moreover, he remembered Wen Huaisu's intolerance for even the slightest imperfection. She wasn't the type willing to share her husband with anyone. When he married Wen Huaisu, he had also made a solemn promise never to take concubines. That was why Wen Huaisu's father had finally agreed to let her marry him. But this time, he couldn't make that promise. He avoided Wen Huaisu, unwilling to entangle himself too deeply with her. As for Princess Sinyu, her death in his previous life had left him with a sense of guilt. This time around, he would make amends for her. Everything was unfolding according to his plan. His career soared upward, riding a wave of success. Amidst the blooming flowers of Chang'an, youth flourished triumphantly. He was no longer the man of his past life, treading each step with humility and caution. Everything proceeded smoothly until the charity art auction, where he encountered Wen Huaisu. When he painted the starving masses for Princess Sinyu, he hadn't thought much beyond that. Princess Sinyu was the darling of heaven, the most noble little princess. He simply wished to bestow upon her all the finest honors and fame. He hadn't considered whether this might push Wen Huaisu to the edge. So when he saw the crowd accusing Wen Huaisu of plagiarism, he immediately spoke up to stop them. This wasn't his intention. Still, he thought it wouldn't matter. She was just a lady of the harem, destined to marry eventually. Such a minor incident would be forgotten soon enough. But he hadn't anticipated Wen Huaisu's effortless counterattack. Princess Sinyu was utterly humiliated and unleashed a furious rage upon him. Nor had he imagined Princess Sinyu to be such a fickle, promiscuous woman who could fall for another man. Had it been Wen Huaisu, this would never have happened. Back then, countless suitors had sought Wen Huaisu's hand, yet she had dismissed them all. Yet she had taken a liking to him. This stemmed from his meticulous preparation. He knew precisely what Wen Huaisu cherished and despised, catering to her preferences. He made her believe they shared common interests. This pattern repeated itself. In this lifetime too, Wen Huaisu harbored affection for him and remained unmarried. Shen Mingyan mused that perhaps reuniting with Wen Huaisu might not be impossible. He just had to be careful not to let Princess Sinyu discover it. But Wen Huaisu did not consent. Well, that was to be expected. Talented women were always proud and aloof. Later, Wen Huaisu married. But the groom was not him. In that moment, Shen Mingyan felt a hollow void in his heart. The sounds of gongs and drums grew fainter and fainter. Shen Mingyan slowly collapsed to the ground. Half a year later, Princess Sinyu was sent off for a political marriage. Before her departure, she escaped, riding a horse to find Shen Mingyan. "It's all your fault for breaking off our engagement. Otherwise, I wouldn't have to marry that old man. You must take me with you." Shen Mingyan gave her a cold glance and said, "This was always your destiny. As a princess, you live off the people's offerings. Marrying for peace is your duty." Princess Sinyu, enraged, charged her horse straight at him. Shen Mingyan couldn't dodge in time. He fell into a pool of blood, several parts of his body crushed flat. He struggled, calling out for help. He wanted to live. Even if he'd lost his beloved Wen Huaisu, he still had a bright future ahead. He could win Wen Huaisu back. At the moment of death, he seemed to reach his daughter from his previous life, the one who had died young. She wore the apricot blossom Ruchuan dress Wen Huaisu had made for her. Nian Nian said she served as a child attendant in the Buddha's realm, having begged for her mother's rebirth, and merely brought him along as an afterthought. He should have died long ago. Stop struggling. Stop disturbing mother.